Guys, so I'm going to do a real quick tutorial on the wet application method. I'm going to apply a stencil decal to a glass cutting board. So I want to cut my item in reverse so that when it is applied to the glass cutting board and it shows through, it is in the proper orientation. So we're going to do that, and I'm using the smooth side of the cutting board to apply my decal, and the textured side is for cutting. That's the side that's going to face out. So what I do when I'm making a decal or a stencil or something that's going on an item and it needs to be centered is I create a weeding box around my decal, and then I cut the decal and the app tape to the exact dimensions of the item that I'm applying it to, so that I can get it centered perfectly when I'm applying it to the surface, and I don't have to try to center it. And I've got my wet application solution here. This is, I fill this up about halfway with water, and I put in a few drops of Dawn. I've not tried any other dish soap, but I would think they would work. Dawn works. I've also used straight, like 91% alcohol, and just saturated the surface and applied it that way. So I'm gonna lay down a towel so I don't make a mess. I don't usually do this at my desk, but we're gonna do it for today to show this. And so I have already cut my stencil, and again I mirrored it and cut it in reverse, and I'm going to remove the backing and then wet my cutting board and apply and show you how we do that. So hopefully you guys can see okay here. So I've applied my app tape. I want to burnish my decal onto my app tape really well. And I'll provide links for all of the stuff that I'm using. This is the Enduramask Perfect Tear paper app tape from Sign Warehouse. I really like their paper app tape. It's my favorite. And other than decals that I'm giving to a customer or whatnot, or when I'm layering multicolors, I always use paper tape. So I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to pull the backing off the decal. It looks like some of our paper's sticking, but I must have cut it a little too deep. But we should be able to get that off, no problem. And we have a little spot not sticky. And I'm going to hold on to that. And we have a little bit of the paper backing right here. Just pull that off. Alright, so our decal is ready to apply. I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to take my wet solution and spray my cutting board. And then I'm going to line up my decal. And again, because I cut it to the same dimensions as the cutting board, I just line up my edges so that they fit perfectly. And I hold it down. It does also allow you the chance to reposition your decal. See how I'm moving it around to get it exactly where you want. And I might have done this one a little too wet, but you need to work fairly quickly because it will start to dry. And now I'm just pushing all of the solution out of the decal. So I'm going to push it on all four sides. Just keep pushing it out until all of the wet solution comes out. You can buy a wet application solution, and if you were doing a lot of on-site large-scale decal type stuff, you might want to do that, but for home use this is perfect. You can just make up a bottle and keep it nearby. So I'm just squeezing out all of that soapy water. and burnishing it down. And so the point of this, one, is as you saw, it gave me a chance to move my decal around so that I could get it exactly where I wanted it. But it also allows you to smooth out the vinyl so that you're not getting any air bubbles underneath. And so you really want to just walk away and let it sit for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. When I'm doing stencils, I do a lot of sandblasting, so when I'm doing stencils and things like that, I'll just do one and then I'll move on to the next one and do the next one. And as I get through them, I come back and the first one's ready to go. But we'll see. We're not quite ready. We need to let it sit. So, being impatient. So again, I'm using the Enduramask Perfect Tear paper app tape. It's a 12-inch by 100-yard roll. I use quite a bit of this stuff. I don't reuse app tape. I throw it away. I'm as stingy as I am with a lot of other things. I'm not stingy with my app tape. I know people like to use things like contact paper or press and seal or things like that, but there's no substitute for using the right tool for the right job. And I believe a roll of this is maybe, for the 12-inch wide, is maybe $35. And if you were buying it by itself, so all you bought was that and the just the roll, 12-inch roll with shipping, because they have a $9.99 flat rate shipping charge, then you're paying $45 maybe for 100 yards, and so that's $4.50 a yard, so that's $1.50 a foot. It's fairly cheap. $1.50 is not that bad, but I think that's actually a little more than it actually costs. I think it's cheaper than that, and you can buy it in other widths. I like to have 6-inch app tape and 12-inch app tape. So you can see now as I'm pulling this back, and notice that when I pull this back, I'm pulling back my app tape at a complete 180 from the surface. Don't pull your app tape this way. When you pull it this way, the vinyl wants to come with it. So fold it back on itself. And you just, I'm going to kind of use my hand to hold anything down. I should wait a little longer, and if I waited longer, I wouldn't be having this issue quite as much. Need to be a little more patient. Just going to burnish that back down. And this here, this is just from my weeding box that I made. And I will say, I'm also using a matte, temporary matte vinyl. I wasn't making this for anything particular, and I didn't want to use 651, so I'm using a 631 equivalent vinyl, which is what I use when I do my stencils for my sandblasting or for painting. I use 631 for my wooden signs and all of that stuff as well, so I have quite a bit of it. I buy it in 10, 30, 50 yard rolls. So I'm being impatient. You just want to be pushing the water out. That arrow does not want to stay down. If I were making this as something to stay and it just wouldn't go down, I would just recut the arrow. Just push out any more water that might be in there. AT65 tape, which is made by R Tape, works great for wet application as well. So we've got that. I've not tried to use contact paper with the wet method. If anybody has tried it or wants to try it and report back, let me know. I know for a lot of people, because you can buy it at store at Walmart or whatnot, it's always great in a pinch. And for some people, they just might not be able to afford a 100-yard roll of app tape at a time. And so that works, and that's absolutely fine. but I do not know if it works for this. So I'm just going to blot this off, and I'm going to let it sit. If this were 651 or some other equivalent permanent vinyl, FDC or Avery or something like that, any of them, you just let it sit. The moisture that's between the decal and the glass will dry. Let it sit for a few days, and then it's ready to go. But here is our cutting board, and I don't know if you can see this, but there's not a bubble in sight. It's been applied. Bubble free, perfectly centered and straight, because I made it the same size as the cutting board. But you can see that not one single bubble anywhere. So I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.